Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our garden for the first vegetable garden tour of the season. We live in Spokane, Washington, where the hardiness zone ranges from 5B to 6A. And I have a little bit of an interesting story to tell you before we get started. So Bill and I just returned from a wonderful 2-week vacation in Ireland, and we saw a lot of beautiful Irish gardens, which I'll share with you in next week's video. But because of the timing of our trip, we needed to plant a lot of vegetables a bit earlier than we usually do. And there were some cooler temperatures while we were gone, because you better believe I was watching the Spokane weather. And our garden came through it just fine. Phew! Do you do that too when you go on vacation? You stress over your plants and wonder how they're doing? Well, anyway, fortunately, I have a happy story to share. But let's get started. What I'm going to do is go bed by bed through the garden, show you what's growing, what's happening, and share tips along the way so that you can be extra successful in your own vegetable garden. So let's start with this rather mysterious bed because it's covered with floating row cover. And that's because I'm growing red Russian kale underneath it. And that is a member of the cabbage family, so they're very susceptible to both aphid and cabbage worm damage. This is the only bed I haven't peeked at since we've gotten home from our trip. So you and I are both going to see at the same time what's happening underneath that cover. Wow, it's actually looking pretty good. I don't see any problems with it. And to be honest, I kind of thought that it might have bolted to seed because I could see it really was exceeding the height of this support that I have over it. But we enjoy adding some of the kale leaves to our salads, and it makes for a nice texture and flavor. So these are doing just fine. No insect damage at all thanks to this cover. And I'm just going to cover it back over and make sure that I harvest some leaves later today. Now before I cover this bed back over, there's one more thing I wanted to share with you in case you haven't seen my videos about dealing with slugs. Slugs certainly love to eat things like kale leaves and other cabbage family crops. But I use little copper tape rings around the base of each plant. And the copper basically repels the slugs so they do not go into the plants and cause all that damage. So that is something that is very easy to make. It's in my book, The Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook, and I also have videos about dealing with slugs and other types of insects, and this is a great way to keep the slugs away from plants that have a central stem. Next up is the carrot and parsnip bed. These plants that have the large leaves are parsnips, and they grow quite large, so I have spaced them a few inches apart, and they're doing quite well. These other 3 rows are carrots. This variety, which is Narvik, has germinated great. This row is Nantes carrots, and it's been kind of an okay germination rate. And then this one is Dulciva, and it had kind of a so-so germination rate. I don't know if maybe the seeds were a little bit older, but even so, we have a nice amount of carrots here for a good harvest. But they're all doing well. Now, when I plant carrots, I always spread the seeds pretty thickly. And then, in theory, a few weeks later, that's when I need to thin the seedlings so that they have about a 2 to 3 inch spacing. The reason they need that is because you want the root to grow unimpeded. And if you cluster them all together, that would be why you're getting skinny little carrots or deformed carrots. So I just wanted to mention, if you haven't done that yet, do it quickly. Of course, I did not have time to take care of that before we left on our trip. So yesterday I came in here and I went, oh my gosh, I should have done this sooner, but I did get them all thinned out, and I'm hoping that they're going to develop just fine. Now this next bed has 2 different things growing in it. First of all, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gray zucchini plants growing in it. And yes, I agree that they are planted quite closely together. However, last year I grew them and I fully intended to thin them. I had planted a few extra seeds and they did beautifully being crowded together. So I decided to do that again this year. Now the squashes that I get from these zucchini plants are going to be donated to our local food bank. So I'm very excited about growing them again. They are an awesome variety and I heartily recommend them. The other weird thing I have going on in here is I have a couple of small marigold plants that I had started using the winter sowing method. And if I just planted them in the bed when they were little seedlings and not given them any kind of protection, the quail in our garden, which are a beautiful type of a bird, but like to nibble on small plants, would have eaten these plants all the way down to the ground. So what I did is I just took a bunch of extra branches that we had lying around and made like a little fort around them, and that has helped them grow pretty well. So I can remove this probably in about a week. Now this is our potato bed. And if you follow me on social media, you know that Bill and I are having a potato growing competition. And it all started because Bill had read an article in Mother Earth News saying that there was this other method of growing potatoes that he thought sounded pretty interesting. And so he wanted to give it a try. I was dubious about the method. This is the control group, I guess you'd say, because these are the 4 that I'm growing the conventional way, where you bury the tubers down into the soil a few inches and then you let them come up a little bit and then you fill in the soil around them, let them grow some more foliage, fill in more soil, and so on. So these are all Russian bananas, and Bill is using the straw method. So what he did is he took 5 tubers, because we bought a bag of 9, and he just laid them on the surface of the soil in this bed, and then he created a little barrier here, and every time the potatoes start growing, he adds in some straw and then lets them grow a little bit more, adds more straw, and so on. So straw is the only thing that these tubers are growing in. And I kept thinking, well, it's so traditional and successful to grow potatoes in the soil. You know, I just really was doubtful that this could work. But you can see his plants are doing great. Mine are doing quite well, but oh boy, I don't know if I'm going to lose this one. So this is the lettuce bed, and I'm growing it under a cover because the quail in our garden love to munch on lettuce leaves as well. What happened is when we got home, all of the earliest lettuce that I planted had bolted to seed. It was about this tall, had flowers on it, so I pulled all of them out. And what's remaining is this red lettuce and one that I can't remember the variety name of. But these ones have not bolted yet, so I figure we'll have some salads over the next few nights because I don't want to waste them. And then I need to figure out, okay, what's the succession crop to go in this bed? I haven't gotten that far yet. And then Bill, of course, had some extra onions, so he poked them into this area of the bed. We've also got some Italian leaf parsley plants in here, and that's about it. It needs some weeding, but I'll get to that when I figure out what's going in after this lettuce crop. I also wanted to mention that I've been putting a small piece of shade cloth over the lettuce bed just to decrease the intensity of the sunlight because it's been getting pretty warm lately. And that really does make a nice difference. This next bed is also under a cover, and that's because I'm growing beets and Swiss chard in here. Both of them are very susceptible to a damaging insect called leaf miner, and so it's a great way to keep the crop safe. However, this year I have had terrible luck with the germination rate of the beets and the Swiss chard, especially the Swiss chard. I don't understand why they're doing so badly this year, and I've been too busy to pursue it. But this side is the beets. I'm growing both golden beets and the red cylinder beets. And There's also some more parsley plants. But this is a bed that I'm not very proud of, but I wanted to show you the reality of the garden, and sometimes things don't go according to plan. Now this bed has a special crop that I love growing every year, and I've got it under shade cloth and row cover. Can you guess which crop it is? So I'll take off the shade cloth first. And if you guessed broccoli, you would be right. Now, let me talk about this row cover for just a moment. This bed and the two previous beds that I showed you are under agricultural insect netting. This is something I discovered a few years ago, and it is fabulous. It's super durable. The openings in it are tiny, tiny. I've never even had aphids go through it. So let me show you a close-up of it, and then we'll take a look at how the broccoli plants are doing. The thing I love about agricultural insect netting, in addition to how tiny the holes are and how durable it is that I can see right through it to see how the plants are doing. Now granted, we're using a shade cloth right now, so I have to pull that off to take a quick look at the plants. But this netting works so well, and I wanted to bring it up because there are a lot of people who have gotten it, and they also think that it is the cat's meow. I do have it in my Amazon store under organic gardening products, and I have 3 different sizes. I like this better than floating row cover for the very reason that you can't see what's going on underneath it. And sometimes you can miss that a problem is going on when you can't see what the plants are and you don't take the time to lift off the floating row cover. So this stuff is fabulous. Now, I also should mention that as an Amazon affiliate, I do receive a small commission for purchases, but it does not impact the price you pay in the least. Okay, let's take a look at the broccoli plants. Now, if you do not grow broccoli because they are bug magnets, take a look at this. There is not any type of damage on the leaves anywhere on the plants. I also wanted to clarify we're using the shade cloth this time of year because in theory, broccoli is a cool season crop and we get pretty hot summers. And we have found that it reduces the amount of stress on the plants if we give them a little bit of shade during the hottest time. And today is a very hot day. So this is Bell Star. It is my all-time favorite variety of broccoli. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plants in this bed. I probably could do with 6 or 7, but I went with 8, and they are so productive. So one of the things I need to do is look at the bottoms of the plants to see if there's any leaves hanging down onto the soil surface, and I see one right here. I need to remove anything that's doing that because I'm using the copper rings at the base of the broccoli plants as well to keep slugs away from them because slugs love broccoli. And if I have any leaves that are touching the soil surface outside the rings, that gives them basically like a freeway ramp up onto the plants. We don't want that. So let's take a look. So down here, this one was touching the soil, so it comes out. And then up in this plant, which you might not be able to see, I see a leaf that has turned yellow. That's just normal. So I'm taking that off. And then I'm just going to check each of the plants to see what needs to be removed from the base. This is the center of one of the broccoli plants, and they are just starting to think about forming heads, which is very exciting. So that's going to take a while. However, the important thing you need to know is that when you harvest that first head on a plant, the plant is not done producing for you. It will produce additional side shoots, and with Bell Star, the side shoots are almost as large as the main head. So keep an eye on your plants. You definitely want to harvest the heads at the ideal time, and that's where the buds on the heads are still reasonably tight, but there's just a little bit of a give to the head if you touch it. If they are wide open and turning yellow, because those will be flower blooms, that is way too late. So you want a good size normal head that's got a little bit of a give to it, and that's when you want to cut it off. Okay, now it's time to look at the second of our 3 rows of raised beds and see how things are doing. This is our small hoop house. It covers 2 of our raised beds. We mainly use it during the fall and winter months to grow cold-tolerant plants. And then during this time of year, we might grow melons, tomatoes, peppers, those types of warm season crops that really love the heat. And this year, Bill is growing peppers in here, both sweet peppers and hot peppers. So let's take a quick look inside. Okay, so here's one of the beds. Here's the other one. And you'll notice that Bill, who in addition to being the pepper king is also the onion king, has some onions and shallots growing in between the plants. He likes to use every square inch of space possible. So this is one of Bill's beds because we divide up the garden a little bit for our favorite crops to grow. And what he's got growing on the north side of this support system is Pandorino grape tomatoes. And he loves growing them because they make fabulous fresh salsa. And on the south side of the bed, he's growing a lot of shallots. So again, he's trying to maximize every square inch of space in the garden. This support is made with a 4-foot by 8-foot piece of concrete reinforcing wire, and it's supported with 2 heavy-duty fence posts. And then every now and then he'll string some twine in here just to rein the plants back in so that they don't go this way and break. He also planted on the north side of the bed because plants tend to want to grow toward the south, and so he felt that this was a good way to set them up. So this bed's kind of funny because it pulled a fast one on us while we were on vacation. Before we left, these ones on this side, which are green arrow, were about maybe this tall. And I thought, okay, they're going to start producing pods pretty soon. Hope I don't miss the harvest. And these ones, which are a purple potted pea, were maybe about this tall. We got back and I thought, holy cow. Look at the size of these. So I'm 5'7". I'd say that's at least 6.5 feet. That is just nuts. And they do have some pods on them, so that's encouraging. But the thing with peas is they're really a cool season crop. We've got a very hot day today and some other ones in the forecast before the temps drop a bit. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I thought, well, you know, we'll reward them for their effort and hopefully we will get some harvest out of them. This is the slowest I've ever had green arrow peas develop. And I think that it was because I didn't start them indoors in rain gutters like I normally do. And so I direct sowed them in the garden this spring. And apparently they really like being started in the rain gutters ahead of time. So note to self for next year. Okay, this is one of our corn beds. We're planning to plant corn as a succession crop to the pea plants when they're done. Hopefully that will work. This is Sweetness Bicolor. It's a variety from Ed Hume seeds that we absolutely love. The interesting thing to note on them is that I started them indoors from seed, which I normally do, but when I transplanted them, Bill said, hey, why don't we just make a hole and plant them deeply, more deeply than we normally would, which I was a little nervous about, thinking that that would give the plants extra strength because we do get some strong windstorms here. And by golly, he was right because the plants look terrific. There are no problems with planting them a little more deeply. So just thought I'd mention that. In this bed, I'm growing a summer squash that I tried for the first time last year. The variety name is Zephyr. I'm going to show you what they look like because I see I've got 2 baby ones on the plants so far. But I grew them last year and they are delicious. And they don't get totally out of hand like some types of zucchini do. So let me show you how cute they are. So look at that. Isn't that beautiful? They're yellow and then they have green tips. And the flavor is amazing. So I've got 3 of those plants, and I also poked in a few batwing mini pumpkin plants just because I started them indoors and thought it would be fun to have those as well. So that's all growing in this bed. Now, as I've been working my way through the garden, chances are you've been noticing there's a lot of grass clippings on the surface of the raised beds. And the whole point behind that is to conserve water because it helps the soil retain its moisture longer. And that is a way to save money because you don't need to water as frequently. But there's something really important you need to know regarding this. I can use our grass clippings because we do not use weed and feed or any other types of herbicides on our lawn. Weed and feed and other herbicides will kill broadleaf plants. And guess what? The majority of vegetable crops are broadleaf plants. So if you're not using herbicides on your lawn, make sure that you add the grass clippings to the surface of the soil to save water. If you are using weed and feed or other herbicides, this is a great motivator to stop using that stuff so that you can use those grass clippings in your garden. In the last bed of this row, I'm growing New England pie pumpkins. You have not had a great pumpkin pie until you've tasted one that's been made with homegrown New England pie pumpkins. Now these will be vining a bit, so I'm going to have to steer the vines every now and then away from the aisles. Now just in case you thought we were totally done with the second row of beds, we also have some containers where we're growing shallots and some peppers. And those work out great because we have a drip irrigation system, and what Bill has done is put an extra line in. So here's a little bit of a close-up. This is the manifold of the drip system for this bed. It's got drip tape to water the pumpkins in this case, and then there's an extra line here, and for each pot there's an individual hose that is connected so that the pots get watered. Now we're finally into the third row of beds, and you might recall when I planted this raised bed because I planted it full of cool season crops, and the types of things I planted were turnips, radishes, arugula, and pak choy. Well, the arugula totally bolted to seed when I checked on it yesterday morning, and half of the pak choy had gone to seed. And it was really tough, so I put those plants into our compost pile. And we need to harvest these ones and use and enjoy them because I hate to waste anything. In this bed and the next one, I've got our famous bean arbor, and I've got 2 kinds of pole beans growing up these supports. One is Vortex and the other is Monte Gusto Yellow. I grew both of those last year, with Monte Gusto Yellow being a new variety to us, and it was amazing. So that's why I'm growing both. The plants are doing fairly well, but I want to show you something because it's really worrisome. This is a bean leaf from one of the plants on the north side of the arbor. And look at the leaf. I haven't taken the time to research this yet because I only just saw it about 5 minutes ago. But I'm kind of thinking it might be earwigs. You know, every now and then they will have a major population boom. And in theory, earwigs are a beneficial insect, but boy, when they decide to damage things, they do quite the job. So this is a really worrisome thing. I'm definitely going to see what I can figure out and then come up with an organic way to deal with the problem. Okay, here's another tomato support. Now this support is just like what Bill's using to grow his Pandarino grape tomatoes. And in this bed, I'm growing several Supremo tomatoes. They are a determinate variety, so they just grow maybe about this tall, which is great. And boy, do they produce a lot of wonderful, kind of like plum tomatoes that are very thick, and they make a fabulous sauce. So this is what I use to make tomato sauce, ketchup, and salsa. I love this variety, not just because it's so tasty, but the plants are so easy to take care of because they're really quite petite. The next bed is where we're growing garlic, And this video is perfect timing because we need to talk about scapes. Now, if you're not familiar with the term scapes, that's what these things are. It only applies to hardneck garlic, not to softnecks. And what happens is the plant wants to bloom. You don't want it to bloom because that will take the energy away from the developing bulb down in the ground. You don't want that either. You want as many cloves and as much size as possible. So the secret to it is to let it grow a little bit, and then when it forms a complete curlicue, like this one here, what you're going to do is go down to the first leaf and snip it off there. Do not throw them away because these are absolutely delicious. One thing I want to mention is you don't want to harvest them when this stalk completely straightens out, because then the stalks will be very tough. So let me get some snippers and I'll show you what I mean. So here's one. Pretty crazy looking things, aren't they? Here's another one. And here's another one. Now let's talk about what you do with them. So what do you do with these crazy things? Well, first of all, the flowers are edible, so I wanted to make sure you know about that. These long tips can be kind of chewy, so we snip them off about here, put this in the compost pile. And then we will just make cuts about every 1.5 or 2 inches. And the next step is to parboil them. That means boiling them in water for about 2 minutes and then removing them. And then you can add them into stir fries while you're making them. You can freeze them, and that's what we'll do with part of the harvest of these scapes because we can enjoy them during the winter months. But once you've had them, you will wish for scapes every single year. And if you're growing hardneck garlic, you're going to get them. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention about scapes is that one of my followers on social media recently mentioned that she uses scapes to make pickles. And Bill is absolutely intrigued by that, so he's going to do a little research and try that this year with some of our scapes. These are the last 2 raised beds in our 3rd row, and this is where I have my squash arbor. So it's made from 2 lengths of cattle panels that we got from the farm store, and then we push it into the shape we wanted and pound it in sticks of rebar on the outside because there's a lot of tension on this wire, as you can imagine. This is where I grow winter squash and cucumbers. And what will happen is I'll sort of guide them up the bottom of the arbor, and then pretty soon they'll be vining more and putting out little tendrils and attaching to this. And if all goes well this summer, weather-wise, this whole arbor should be completely covered by squash vines with cool squashes hanging down, and it's just the neatest thing ever. So let me show you what I'm growing in it. So at the beginning of this row and the last raised bed, I've got 2 cucumber plants, so those will vine up here. And then in this bed, I have autumn frost winter squash. And in the other bed, instead of that, I have Burpee's butterbush butternut squash. Both of those are fabulous varieties. Now, just like at the end of the 2nd row of beds, at the end of the 3rd row of beds, we have more things in containers. So in this one, Bill's growing some pepper plants. This one has an extra Supremo tomato plant in it, as does the one next to it. And in these last 2 pots, I have 2 Chef's Choice orange tomatoes. Those are a slicer tomato that I'm crazy about. And Judith, if you're watching, hello. Yes, I'm growing them again. I'm crazy about Chef's Choice orange, and I'm so glad I could squeeze a couple plants into these pots. I have a little raised bed and decided to grow the leeks in it that I started from seed, and they are doing really well here. So that's cool. Then we have a bed that's on the back side of our little greenhouse, and that's where Bill is growing more onions and shallots. Did I mention that we really like onions and shallots? Now you'll recall that I recently did a video on the planting up of my green stock vertical planters. So I thought, well, a vegetable garden tour isn't complete without showing you how everything is doing so far in these planters as well. These are the zinnias that I planted during that video, and they're already blooming. How cool is that? Now I fully intend to pinch them back so that they send out more shoots and we get a nice bushy plant. Then I've got some bush beans growing in this level. Here is a flat leaf parsley. And then I've got 2 levels that have small pumpkins in them. Very excited about that. And they are just going to town. In the second planter, I've got profusion white zinnias, and I will pinch those back soon too. In the next level, that's where I planted some bean seeds for a type of bush bean, and it was kind of hit or miss on the germination for some reason, so I have reseeded the pockets that are missing plants. The next level down, I have alternated 2 different types of small tomatoes. The taller plants are patio choice yellow, so a yellow cherry tomato. And then this is a dwarf tomato called Orange Hat. I've had really good luck with those. I'll give you a close-up of this next level, but this is where I planted the basil seeds with the little covers over the pockets, and they germinated great. So I'm going to be thinning those out probably to 3, maybe 4 plants. We'll see. And then last but not least, on the bottom is a patty pan squash. Here you can see some of the Treviso basil seedlings in 2 of the pockets. And boy, did they germinate great. Well, that concludes my June 2026 vegetable garden tour. I hope you found it interesting and that some of the tips that I shared were ones you've never heard before. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening.